The prisoner of the Vatican. At 3 a.m, the tourists are gone. The selfie sticks are packed away. The noise of the Vespers has faded into the damp cobblestones. All that's left is the history and the rain. I'm sitting here in the office, looking at a file that's been gathering dust for 5 centuries. The coffee is cold, but the case is hot. We are looking at the Vatican, the seat of God's power on earth, a fortress of piety, prayer, and absolute authority. From the outside, it looks impenetrable, a monolith of marble and faith. But deep within the apostolic palace, locked inside the Sistine Chapel, lies a secret. If you look past the beauty, if you look past the bright colors and the holy figures, the frescoes reveal a different story. They reveal a struggle, a fight, a scream frozen in plaster. This isn't just a masterpiece, it is a crime scene. Welcome back to the agency. I'm your lead investigator, Jack Varnish. Tonight, we're reopening the file on the biggest job in art history, the Sistine Chapel ceiling. We have a suspect, we have a victim, and we have a motive. The patron, Pope Julius II. They called him the Warrior Pope. This wasn't a man who turned the other cheek. This was a man who rode into battle in gold armor. He commanded armies, he conquered cities, and he held the keys to heaven and hell in a clenched fist. The artist? Michelangelo Buonarroti. Let's look at his profile. He wasn't a courtier, he wasn't polite. He had a broken nose from a fistfight in his youth. He was rough, he was dirty, and he was angry. For 4 years, from 1508 to 1512, Michelangelo was locked in this chapel, a prisoner of his own genius. The official story, the one they tell you in the guidebooks, is that he labored to create a divine masterpiece to glorify God. But we know better. Between the brush strokes, he was fighting a war. We believe Michelangelo wasn't just painting a ceiling. He was encoding a rebellion. He was hiding secrets, forbidden knowledge, and personal insults right above the Pope's head. So, pour yourself a drink, dim the lights, let's dissect the plaster. The setup: every crime has a beginning, and this one began with a trap. You see, Michelangelo didn't want this job. In 1508, he was the most famous sculptor in the world. He had just finished the David. He was carving marble. That was his language. He saw painting as an inferior art form, something for decorators, not creators. He was working on a massive project for Pope Julius, a tomb, a mountain of marble statues that would have immortalized him as the greatest sculptor since antiquity. But Rome is a city of whispers and knives. Michelangelo had rivals: Bramante, the architect, Raphael, the young painter. They were the Pope's favorites, and they were jealous. They saw Michelangelo rising, and they wanted to take him down. So, they whispered in the Pope's ear. They told Julius to stop the tomb project. They suggested that instead, he should make the sculptor paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Why? Because they were betting he would fail. They knew he wasn't a fresco painter. Fresco is difficult. It's unforgiving. You have to paint on wet plaster. If you make a mistake, you can't just paint over it. You have to hack the wall down and start again. They thought Michelangelo would produce a disaster. They thought he would be humiliated, and they would be left as the kings of Rome. But they made a fatal mistake. They backed a tiger into a corner. Michelangelo refused at first. He told the Pope, "I am not a painter." But you don't say no to the warrior Pope. Julius forced him, likely under threat of excommunication. So, Michelangelo went into the chapel. He locked the doors, he fired his assistants, and he went to war with the ceiling. The crime scene. Let's talk about the conditions of his imprisonment. Imagine the scene. It's 1508. The chapel is a construction zone. Dust everywhere. Michelangelo designed a scaffolding system that bridged the chapel walls so he didn't have to touch the floor. He lived up there, 60 feet in the air, hovering over the abyss. He wrote a poem about this time. It's not a poem about the glory of God. It's a poem about physical torture. He wrote, "My beard turns up to heaven, my chest bent like a harpy's, my brush always above me, dribbles paint on my face, turning it into a rich pavement." He developed a goiter from craning his neck. His spine was bent. He was in constant agony. He hated the Pope for doing this to him. He hated the clerics who rushed him. He couldn't fight the Pope with a sword. So he fought him with the only weapon he had left, the brush. He decided if he had to paint this ceiling, he was going to fill it with things the church would never approve of. Exhibita. The basement tapes. To understand the first layer of evidence, we have to go back in time. We have to go underground. Years before he stepped foot in the Vatican, a teenage Michelangelo made a secret deal with the prior of the Church of Santo Spirito in Florence. He carved a wooden crucifix for the church. In exchange, the prior gave him a key. The key to the monastery's hospital morgue. Picture it, Florence, 1492. The dead of night. A young boy sneaking into a cold, damp basement filled with the smell of death. He wasn't there to mourn. He was there to learn. Michelangelo dissected human cadavers, dozens of them. This was illegal. It was a desecration of the human body in the eyes of the church, punishable by severe penalties. But he didn't care. He was obsessed. He peeled back the skin to see the machinery underneath. He traced the insertion points of the muscles. He held the human heart in his hands. He sawed through bone to look at the brain. He memorized every tendon, every vein. Now, fast forward back to the Sistine Chapel. Look at the figures on the ceiling. They aren't normal people. They are hypermuscular. They are anatomical maps. Even the women have the deltoids of heavy lifters. He was weaponizing that forbidden knowledge. He was plastering the Pope's chapel with the fruits of his illegal nocturnal activities. But he didn't just study muscles, he studied organs. And there was one organ that fascinated him above all others, the seat of the soul, the brain. Exhibit B, the smoking gun. This brings us to the centerpiece of the ceiling, the most famous image in Western art. The creation of Adam. We all know the image. Adam on the left, languid, weak. God on the right, rushing in, reaching out to give the spark of life. For 500 years, the church looked at this and saw a beautiful, orthodox depiction of Genesis. God in a red cape, surrounded by angels. But in 1990, a detective of a different kind, a physician named Dr. Frank Meshberger, looked at the painting, and he saw something everyone else had missed. He didn't see a cape, he saw a brain. Look closely at the shape of God's mantle. It is a perfect sagittal cross-section of the human brain. The outer curve of the green cloth, it matches the pons of the brainstem. The leg of the angel supporting God, it hangs down in the exact shape and location of the pituitary gland. The swirling robes inside, they trace the cerebrum, the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe. It is too precise to be a coincidence. Remember, this is the man who spent his nights deep in the morgue. He knew exactly what a brain looked like cut in half. So, the question is, why? Why hide a brain right there? This is Michelangelo's dangerous philosophy. He was a humanist. He is telling us that the divine spark isn't just life. It is intellect. It is reason. He is saying that God's greatest gift to man is the mind, the ability to think, to question, to doubt. In an era when the church demanded blind obedience, Michelangelo painted the ultimate symbol of science and rational thought right in the center of the creation story. It was a secret handshake to the intellectuals and a massive silent insult to the dogma of the Pope. But the brain theory is high-minded, it's philosophical. As we dug deeper into the plaster, we found evidence that wasn't about philosophy. It was about pettiness, it was personal. Exhibit C, the holy insult. Let's move our magnifying glass to the entrance of the chapel, right above the door where the Pope would enter for ceremonies. Michelangelo painted the prophet Zechariah here. Now, usually Zechariah is just an old biblical figure. But look closer at this Zechariah. He doesn't look like a generic prophet. We ran a comparison with portraits of the time. The facial structure, the beard, the receding hairline. It's a match. He painted Pope Julius II. Now, putting your boss's face on a prophet seems like a nice gesture, right? A bit of flattery to get paid on time. Wrong. Look at what's happening behind the Pope prophet. Over Zechariah's left shoulder, there are two little angels. Putti. They look adorable, leaning together, whispering. But look at the hand of the angel in the back. Look at his fingers. His thumb is thrust between his index and middle fingers. In Renaissance Italy, this wasn't just a random gesture. This was the fig, fa la fica. It was the obscene gesture of the time. To put it in modern terms, Michelangelo painted a cute little angel giving the Pope the middle finger, right behind his head. For 400 years, every time Pope Julius walked into that chapel to pray, he walked underneath a cherub, flipping him off. And he never knew. That isn't just art. That is a sniper shot of pettiness that echoes through the centuries. Exhibit D, the divine kidney. Let's move further down the ceiling. We established that Michelangelo knew anatomy. He knew the brain, but he also knew pain. During the painting of the ceiling, Michelangelo wrote letters to his family complaining of stones. Kidney stones. If you've never had them, be grateful. It is agony. He was passing jagged crystals while suspended 60 feet in the air, paint dripping into his eyes, his back screaming. He blamed the job. He blamed the Pope. And, true to his psychological profile, he painted his pain. Look at the panel titled, "The Separation of Land and Water." God is flying over the grey waters, his mantle billowing out behind him again. We saw the brain in the creation of Adam. But here, the shape is different. Dr. Garabed Eknoyan, a kidney specialist, analysed the shape of God's cloak in this specific panel. It is a perfect anatomical representation of a right human kidney, but not a healthy kidney. The colouring suggests a polycystic kidney, diseased, swollen. Why paint a diseased kidney hovering over the ocean? It's a cry for help. The Bible says God separated the land from the water. But in Michelangelo's tortured mind, he was begging for his own separation, the separation of the stone from his body. He turned the creator of the universe into a giant medical diagram of his own urinary tract infection. Exhibit E, the mystery of the ignudi. The deeper we look, the stranger it gets. Let's talk about the ignudi. Scattered across the ceiling are 20 young, nude men. They have no wings, they have no halos, they aren't saints, they aren't angels, they aren't in the Bible. So who are they, and why are they naked in the Pope's chapel? They are twisting, turning, holding garlands of oak leaves and acorns. The oak and the acorn were the symbols of the Della Rovere family, Pope Julius's family. On the surface, it looks like a tribute. But look at their expressions. They look bored. They look terrified. Some look like they are struggling to hold the ribbons. Michelangelo was forced to include the Pope's family crest. So, what did he do? He gave the job of holding the crest to 20 naked, muscular youths who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. It was a subversion of the Pope's authority. He turned the Pope's family symbols into props for a display of raw pagan physical beauty. He was saying, "You want your acorns? Fine, but you're going to have to look at these naked bodies to see them." The pagan invasion. Speaking of pagans, have you noticed who is sitting next to the prophets? The Sibyls. These were ancient Greek and Roman fortune tellers, prophetesses who served pagan gods like Apollo. They had nothing to do with Christianity. Yet Michelangelo gave them equal billing with the prophets of the Old Testament. Why? Because Michelangelo believed that wisdom was universal. He was sneaking the ancient world, the world of Plato and Socrates, into the fortress of Catholicism. But look closer at the bodies of these women. Look at the Cumaean Sibyl. She doesn't look like a woman of the Renaissance court. She has the biceps of a blacksmith. Her arm, visible as she holds a book, is rippling with vascular, masculine muscle. Forensic art historians believe Michelangelo used male models for almost all the female figures on the ceiling. He was so obsessed with the masculine, heroic form that he refused to paint softness. He turned the women of the ancient world into bodybuilders. He was filling the Pope's house with a race of giants, a superhuman army that looked ready to tear the roof off. Exhibit G, the mooning. As the years dragged on, the relationship between Michelangelo and Julius II deteriorated. The money stopped coming. The Pope threatened to throw Michelangelo off the scaffolding. The tension is visible in the paint. The figures get larger, looser, angrier, and then we get to the final panel Michelangelo painted, the one directly above the altar, the holiest spot in the room. The scene is the separation of light from darkness. God is swirling in a chaotic vortex. But look at the perspective. This is a difficult angle to pull off. We are looking at God from below, and slightly behind, we see the soles of God's feet. We see his robe swirling up. Art historians have debated this for centuries, but let's look at it with our cold case eyes. Michelangelo, the man who hated the Pope, painted God directly above the altar where the Pope conducts Mass. And what part of God is facing the Pope? His backside. In a panel devoid of angels, devoid of scenery, focused entirely on the twisting body of the Creator, Michelangelo positioned God so that he is effectively mooning the papacy. It is the ultimate exit interview. Michelangelo finished the job, packed up his brushes, and left the Pope with a divine rear end staring him in the face for eternity. The ceiling was finished in 1512. Michelangelo left the Vatican, swearing he would never paint again. But a criminal always returns to the scene of the crime. The repeat offender, 25 years later. 1536. The world has changed. The Protestant Reformation is tearing Europe apart. Rome has been sacked. The mood is dark. Michelangelo is an old man now. He's cynical, he's tired, and he's called back to paint the massive wall behind the altar. The Last Judgment. He is about to commit his greatest offenses yet. During the work, the Pope's master of ceremonies, a man named Biagio da Cesena, visited the chapel. Biagio was a prude, a bureaucrat. He looked at Michelangelo's wall of nude, muscular figures, angels and demons alike, and he was scandalized. He told the Pope it was disgraceful. He said it was fit for a tavern or a bathhouse, not a chapel. Bad move, Biagio. You don't insult a man holding a brush. Michelangelo didn't say a word. He waited for Biagio to leave. Then he went to the bottom right corner of the painting, the section depicting hell. He painted Biagio da Cesena as Minos, the judge of the underworld. He gave him donkey ears, the universal symbol for a fool. But he didn't stop there. He had a large snake coiling around Biagio's body. And where is the snake biting him? I'll let you look closely at the image. But let's just say the snake is making Biagio very uncomfortable in the groin region. When Biagio saw it, he was horrified. He ran to the new Pope, Paul III, and begged him to order Michelangelo to remove it. And the Pope's response? It's one of the greatest lines in history. The Pope reportedly suppressed a smile and said, "Biagio, my authority extends to heaven and earth, but you are in hell, and in hell I have no jurisdiction." The painting stayed. Biagio has been in hell, biting his tongue, with donkey ears, for 500 years. Exhibit Y, the flayed confession. But Biagio wasn't the only victim in the Last Judgment. There is one more body we need to examine, and this one is the most tragic of all. Near the center of the massive painting, we see Saint Bartholomew. He is the saint who was martyred by being flayed alive, having his skin removed. In the painting, Bartholomew sits on a cloud, holding a knife in one hand. In the other, he dangles his own empty, flayed skin. Look at the face on that empty skin. It is distorted, agonized, hollow. It doesn't look like St. Bartholomew. We ran a comparison. That face is a self-portrait. It is Michelangelo himself. He didn't paint himself among the blessed. He didn't paint himself among the damned. He painted himself as an empty shell, a dried-up husk. This is his final confession. He is telling us that the Vatican didn't just take his labor. It didn't just take his time. It took his life. It flayed him. He gave everything he had to these walls, and in the end, he felt like nothing more than a scrap of skin hanging over the abyss. It's a cry for help that has been hanging in the Pope's chapel for centuries, ignored by the millions of tourists who pass beneath it. The verdict. So, the file is full. The evidence is laid out on the desk. What is the verdict on the case of Michelangelo and the Sistine ceiling? Did he deceive his patron? Did he hide things in the art? He is guilty. Guilty of genius. Guilty of rebellion. We have the evidence. A brain hidden in God's cape. A fig gesture to the Pope. A diseased kidney in the sky. A pagan invasion of the holy sanctum. A critic banished to hell. And finally, the artist's own hollowed-out soul. The Sistine Chapel is a masterpiece of religion, yes, but it is also a masterpiece of resistance. It is a monument to the fact that you can buy a man's time, you can buy his labor, but you cannot buy his soul. Michelangelo proved that even when you are working for the most powerful man on earth, if you hold the brush, you hold the power. I'm your host, Jack Varnish. The file is closed, for now. Turn off the light, check the locks, and remember, look closer. The truth is always in the paint.